Yes, so welcome to our Herbert with Freehills event. Thank you so much to our two wonderful guests who are joining us today. We are the Women in Law Society of Birmingham, and we aim to increase diversity and inclusion of women in the legal profession. That's BAME, social mobility and disability by creating events and initiatives to help boost women's confidence that they do have and build on confidence and skills that they don't have into the legal profession. We're so happy to have you two guests here today, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself so I don't not introduced you well enough, and then they're going to do a wonderful presentation, and then we're going to do a Q&A that I've got questions for, and if anybody else has any questions, please type them in the chat, and if we get round to them, which I hope we do, time permitting, we'll ask away the questions. So over to you two. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah. Alagu, if you go on to the next slide, they can see our names.
So that, yeah. Okay, so that, I mean, I'm Alagu. I think to get introductions out of the way, I'm Alagu. I'm a second seat trainee at the firm. I started in March. My first seat was in arbitration, and my second seat's been in corporate, and I sit in the corporate energy group. So I largely help with sort of oil and gas, power infrastructure type deals. So that's me.
The picture you will see on screen is HSF, just for those of you that aren't aware, it's not just a random building. I am Joanna, and I'm also a second seater, so Alagu and I are in the same intake. I did my first seat in a general disputes group, and I'm now in energy finance, so same sector as Alagu, but just the finance work as opposed to the corporate work. I'll give you a bit more of my background just in case it's relevant for any questions anyone wants to ask. But I went to the University of Warwick and I studied law there. And I did a year abroad in Australia whilst I was there. And then in my final year of uni, I did the spring vacation scheme with HSF, and then got my TC off the back of that. And then I had like a year out after I graduated before starting the LPC. So just in case that's relevant to any questions anyone wants to ask.
I'm so sorry, just to interrupt you there. Our actual HSF ambassador just wants to introduce yourself as well. And then of course you two can get on with the presentation. Sorry, forgot to mention that as well. Elena, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Birmingham's, University of Birmingham's HSF campus ambassador. So basically my role is to introduce you guys to HSF. I think most of you are following me on HSF graduates _Birmingham. So yeah, just continue following me there for updates and more events like this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Back to you two.
I should have probably done a sort of, like Joanna did, an introduction to my background, just a brief summary of my background. So I went to school in India, finished up there in about 2015. I started at uni at King's in 2016. I studied law. I did my vacation scheme at the firm in 2018 and got the training contract off of that. And yeah, so that's basically me. So if we get started with the presentation, so as Joanna said, that's our office at Exchange Square, just behind Liverpool Street Station. I sit on the 6th floor. Well, I technically have only been into the office twice since I moved into my new seat, so haven't really sat there.
More times than me, though.
Yeah. So that is the office. So just in terms of an introduction to the firm, we can keep it quite brief because I think a lot of this information is on the website, but we have 26 offices across 20 countries, which essentially means that as a trainee at HSF, you do actually have an international experience. It's not just work that's related to London or England, the UK. It's truly international. I mean, all of the matters that I've been helping on are well across the globe. Even when I was in arbitration, I was helping with things with different offices. I've worked with our New York office, our Hong Kong office. So you do get opportunities to work with other offices, understand how different offices work, how the culture it may or may not be different in those offices. So it is truly an international experience. So as it says there, 84% of trainees do get to go on client or international secondment. And I mean, I think a lot of the time international secondment seems very exciting, but there are a lot of people who actually prefer going on client secondments as well. They're really good exposure. You also get to sort of network with clients and build your network early on. And if you do well, their clients do remember. And again, in terms of pro bono and citizenship, the firm does commit a lot. It is, they say, woven into the fabric of the firm, and it truly is. I mean, we do trainees. Every new cohort of trainees assists with the Whitechapel Legal Advice Clinic, which is in partnership, I think, with Citizens Advice. So we get referred cases, usually relating to employment and tenancy agreements and things like that. And it's a really good experience because you get assigned a case and you are supervised, but you essentially run your own case. So you contact the client, you run the interviews, you do all the drafting. If there's a claim to be filed, you help the client file it. You may even get the opportunity to sort of, if it does get there, to sort of present in court and or find someone who, or sort of instruct someone else to do that. So yeah, it's all interesting things. I mean, apart from Whitechapel, I've helped with quite a few others, including today. I've been helping draft some things for a pro bono client of the firm. So yeah, it's really good experience. And those are just a few awards the firm's had in the last year. I mean, I'm happy to take questions on the slide now, or we can wait to the end, whichever we prefer.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please do pop them in the chat, and then if they are like really into the PowerPoint, we can just answer them as they come along. Yeah, well.
Anything? You mentioned clients or comments. What sort are there? I
mean, we haven't personally done any yet because it's more common to do them in your third or fourth seat, but most of the client secondments are either corporate or disputes secondments. There's a whole range of them. What have we got? BA systems, Sky is a very popular client secondment.
BP.
BP, yeah.
I think BAT. I don't remember BAT for them.
I think British American Tobacco as well.
Yeah, BAT.
Yeah.
And then we also, I mean, you can go on secondment inside the. I think there's also there is a client secondment to Liberty, which is your pro bono client of the firm, and so Liberty is one that is very popular with a lot of lawyers at the firm. There's also an internal secondment to the digital law group at the firm, which is sort of HSF's. It's their step towards AI, but it's that's another popular one with trainees because you also if you know coding or even if you don't, it's not a requirement. You can sort of join there and get some exposure to that side of the firm as well.
I think the other questions aren't necessarily related to this slide. So if you want, Alagu, we can just like quickly get through all the slides and then start answering the questions. I think that might be a good way.
Yeah. I think that might be quicker. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So apart from those, so HSF, I mean, 75% or so of the revenue is largely driven by corporate and disputes work at the firm, and they call that the twin engine structure of HSF. I'm sure you've read about it. If you haven't, well, that's something you can go and Google afterwards. But it's sort of, the firm's largely driven by the corporate and disputes practice. But apart from that, it is a full service firm. So we do have a finance department, we have real estate, IP, TMTs, employment, pensions, competition, tax, all very high up there in the rankings, and all great teams to work in. And it is a full service firm, so a lot of this will tie into each other when you're helping with a deal or helping with any dispute. So yeah, as a trainee here, you sort of get you get a lot of options, which is if you're not sure about what you want to do, it's always nice to have options. But also, even if you are sure, so I came into the firm saying I want to be a disputes lawyer, like many people who come to HSF because of its reputation for disputes. But you will hear, and it's not uncommon to hear the story about the person who came in saying they wanted to be a disputes lawyer and ended up as a corporate lawyer, or a person who came in wanting to be a corporate lawyer and ended up a disputes lawyer. So there is a lot at the firm, and I think the tip that all of us get is be open-minded and take each seat as it comes, and sort of learn and see whether you like the work that's being done there or not. And yeah, it's sort of give each seat an equal opportunity before you finally decide where you think is best for you to qualify. So that's that. So the firm is very big on diversity and inclusion, as other firms in the city are. It's value driven, and people are encouraged to connect, collaborate, lead, and excel, as it says. And I mean, the firm is genuinely committed to diversity and inclusion. And I think they've also now, you might have read in the press, but they've also now acknowledged that the firm's not where it needs to be in terms of it is getting to where it needs to be in terms of gender diversity, but not necessarily in terms of ethnic backgrounds and things. And so you might have read about the 10 actions for change that the firm has recently committed to, which is basically to enable the firm to reach where it should be and to attract the best talent they can and retain the best talent. Yeah, we have Joanna will talk about this, but we have a multiculturalism network which hosts events, and their recent ones have been on microaggressions, privilege, and allyship, and they've been incredibly interesting, incredibly eye-opening, and I think the number of people from the firm that attended those events actually showed that there was an interest across the firm to learn and to acknowledge and work towards a more diverse firm. So yeah, the firm also engages with their clients, as it says, and clients value diversity as well in this environment, because I think diversity forms a part of your ESG, and I think clients are all looking for their entire supply chain is driven by ESG now, or will be in the next few years. So it is very important to clients as well, and so the firm is recognizing that and working towards it. So yeah, that's that. I'm sure there'll be questions on this, so I mean, we can take those questions at the end after we've covered all of the networks, which Joanna will do now.
Thanks, Alagu. So this slide just gives an example of the networks at HSF. So you've got the IRIS network, which is our LGBTQ plus network, family, ability, multiculturalism, military, social mobility, and we've got a few different women's networks, which is not that common, and I think is to have a few different women's law networks. So I mean, so I personally am part of the Women's Trainee Lawyer Network, which I think is a good reason why I should speak to that. But the Women's Lawyer Network doesn't actually allow trainees as part of it. That's and that's why the Women's Trainee Lawyer Network was started. And as you'd imagine, the point of it really is just to start sort of discussions and engagement and bring awareness to gender equality sort of from the beginning of your career. And I think the reason why it's quite good to have it separated to the Women's Lawyer Network is just as trainees, your issues, I guess, and what you see in terms of gender inequality is quite different than what an associate will see. So for associates, a lot of what they're thinking about is, for instance, the 26% female partnership that there is, and sort of their route to partnership, and they're looking for mentors to help them through that. For us as trainees, obviously that's not the priority right now. So it's that there are different issues, which I think it makes it quite good to separate out the women lawyers and women trainee lawyers. Saying that as well, it also offers a great opportunity for trainees because it's the only one of all the networks at the firm that is completely organized by, and we host lots of workshops and events which are and sort of help towards gender equality. For example, one workshop we did was an unconscious bias workshop, which was really well attended. We've got one coming up, which I'm really excited about because I've been planning it a lot, and it's Women in the West End network. So that's a panel event about sort of women in another industry, and it's supposed to sort of link the skills that women in the West End and women lawyers can sort of use. So it's quite good because not all the events and sort of workshops we run are like completely law related. It's more about gender equality, not just sort of gender and law. I realize I've spoken a lot about the Women Trainee Lawyers Network, but this is the women's law event, so I think that's okay. But as you will see, there are a lot of different other networks. I know Alagu is part of the BAME network. I don't know if you want to say a quick minute on BAME, Alagu, just because it is network, so it might be good to mention.
Yeah, so the BAME network is, so the firm has a wider multiculturalism network, but the BAME network is sort of run by trainees. So every year, 2 trainees take over to run the committee, and many people join the committee. And I think every year they try to do different things. And this year for Black History Month, the firm actually did, the BAME committee drove it, and they put out a publication. And it's available on HSF's website, and I would recommend reading it. It's a really insightful piece, and it's got people from within the firm who've written sort of their experiences and what they think community means to them. But there's also people from outside of the HSF network. There's people from Goldman Sachs and other places. So it's all very. I think it just shows that there is connect across the city, and I would recommend looking at that. The other thing is, the BAME network works with the Multicultural Network on some events, but also they host their own. And one interesting one that they've recently started is a book club, which Joana and I attended last time. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, they do, there's, I think for Black History Month, we decided to do Black authors. So we did Girl, Woman, Other, which was very interesting. I mean, the discussion was very interesting. And I think we ended up with a situation where everyone was then sort of recommending books they've read. And so it is a nice way to connect with other trainees across the firm and get to know them and just have a discussion about things. So that's the BAME network. If we move on to the next slide. So
the application process. I'll try and whiz through this as quick as possible, but I'm sure you'll know that it all begins with an online application form. So this will include obviously your academic history, your work experience, and there'll be 3 written questions as well. And then within, I think, 3 days of submitting your application form, you should receive a link to take the online test. This test isn't the Watson-Glaser test, which I know a lot of other firms use. So it is a bespoke test to HSEF, and it sort of combines situational judgment, verbal reasoning, and behavioral questions as well. So it will be sort of reflective of the types of scenarios that they'd sort of expect a trainee to experience if you were at the firm. Saying that, there is a practice test available on the graduate recruitment website. So I'd highly recommend you to have a look at that before you did the real test, just so you can sort of get used to the types of questions that are asked. Yeah, and then if you meet the sort of benchmark that is set for that online test, then the graduate recruitment team will review your form. And if your form meets the requirements, then you'll be invited to an assessment centre at the firm. And then, well, it would be at the firm. At the moment, they're all being done virtually, of course. But then if you impress at the assessment centre, you'll be invited to one of the vacation schemes. So that's sort of a quick summary of the process. It's probably worth saying that although I know that your A-level grades are asked for obviously in the application, there's no actual minimum requirement for A-levels. So don't worry about that, still apply. In terms of university grades, HSEF is looking for consistent sort of 2-1 grades. And I will say mitigating circumstances are considered. So if you do have any mitigating circumstances, please do ensure that you've got that down on the form. If you're not sure about anything, please do reach out to the graduate recruitment team. Just ask, that they'll be more than happy to give you more information and sort of advise you on it. Our application window is from September to December. So for those of you who are just sort of looking at applications now, you still have over a month to get your applications in. So get going, I guess. What I will say is that you can only sit the online assessment once in each recruitment season. So that goes for the applications for vacation schemes as well. So we have a couple of vacation schemes, but you can only ever apply for one at a time, but you can apply for open days as well. So if that makes sense. So you can apply for an open day and a vacation scheme, but you can't apply for both the winter vacation scheme and the summer one, for instance, in the same recruitment period. So if you are unsuccessful for a vacation scheme, I think that's enough on the process. So I think we'll just move to the final slide before taking some questions. So these are some application form tips on the screen, so you guys can get those down. I'm going to pick a few to talk about because I'm not going to talk about all of those. Attention to detail I'll pick up because I think this is a really, really underestimated one by a lot of applicants. I think people really underestimate how important this one is, and I'm going to mention it because I think it's the easiest one to get right. Things like giving evidence of what you've done, like by the time you've got to your application, all your evidence is the same. You can't add anything at that point. But when it comes to attention to detail, you can definitely make sure that your application is perfect. When I say perfect, I mean you should not have any typos in your application. Really underestimated, but students put in so much effort and so much time into their applications, and then you'll read an application form and there'll be a typo and it will just look sloppy and it will just look like you didn't put that time or effort in, and it's just such an easy thing to fix. And I do think if it's your application and you've spent so much time staring at it, sometimes it's really easy for you to miss your own mistakes because you've almost read it so many times. So definitely get someone else to review your application. Try changing the format or the colors or something so that it looks different when you reread it. But
Joanna,
I think
anyone else lost her?
Joanna, yeah.
Okay, let me just message her. But let me just see if I can get this. Oh,
sorry, I think I got
yeah.
Sorry about that, everyone. But I think if you caught the end of what I was saying, I was wrapping up anyway. So I'm happy for us to go to questions unless Alagu, you want to add anything at the moment?
Yeah, on the attention to detail point, just the other thing to keep in mind, I think it happens more often than not, and it's something. Is my screen black?
No, we can see it.
Okay. Yeah, so something that happens more often than not is someone writes an amazing application and then you get to the end of it and the last sentence will say, and that is why I want to do a training contract at Allen and Overy or Freehills when you're applying to Herbert Smith. And that just looks really bad. So just make sure that you, as Joanna said, read it, reread it, had other people read it. And I think something that I think the best tip I got in uni when I was applying was when you put in a sentence, and I mean this doesn't apply to every single sentence, but in essence, when you put in a sentence into your application, if you can replace Herbert Smith or Freehills, wherever you're applying, with another law firm in the city, it probably isn't a sentence that should be in there, or it should be reworded such that it's very focused on the firm. Because I think what firms essentially look for is why law, why the firm, why law in the city, and why law at that specific firm. And so every couple of sentences, every paragraph should sort of reference back to those 3 points to keep your application very focused. So make sure you're sort of taking that approach and telling them why law, why the city, and why that specific firm. And I know it's hard because from the outside, all city law firms look the same. They're all international, all have secondments, all have or most are full service firms. So from the outside, it is quite hard. But I think it's attending these kind of events that also gives you a little bit of insight into each of the firms, so that you can put in that additional bit of information into your application that sort of makes it stand out. So do research the firms well, but where you can, I'd say attend events as well, because you learn a lot more, I think, meeting the people from the firm than by just reading about them online. So so I think that takes us to the end of the presentation. So I can stop sharing.
Yeah. Do you want me to ask you the questions so you don't have to read and then say and then understand them, or are you happy to? Do you want me to read them for you?
I can't actually see them because when I was kicked out, they disappeared.
Of course.
So I'd be happy for someone to read them for me. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So the first question is from Georgia, and she asked, Joanna, do you think your year abroad in Australia strengthened your application?
Yes. I think it did. Not to say that if you haven't done I definitely.
Oh, I think we've lost you again.
It did. HSF is Herbert Smith. Am I here? No.
Kind of.
Kind of.
I got that tail end of it, but your screen's frozen.
Oh, great.
Oh no, you're back. You're back.
I'm back. Okay. Yeah, I do think it strengthened my application. We're dual headquartered in Australia. It's really, could you type your response on the chat? Oh, I could type. Can you now hear me well enough? Or
yeah, you're really clear now.
Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, we're dual headquartered in Australia. Obviously, Herbert Smith Freehills is a very, very international firm. So having any sort of international experience does strengthen your application, provided you can back it up. And I think this goes for any experience that you're talking about. So I think me saying alone, I went to Australia, like doesn't strengthen my application, but me explaining sort of what I learned from my experience of being abroad, sort of learning the different culture and the legal system, just the fact that you've like gone away and had to deal with living in another country and being like independent for a year is sort of a skill in itself. So as long as you can back up any experience you have with what you learned from what would make me at Herbert Smith Freehills, then as I think this what I'm explaining you can sort of apply to any experience you're talking about. As long as you can link it back to why that would make you a better trainee at Herbert Smith Freehills, then I think that's the best way to use your experiences to strengthen your application. So I hope that's helpful if you heard that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. We heard it all in the end. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
No worries. The next question is from Davika, and she says, thanks for today. Can you tell us what makes HSF stand out from other law firms and what makes the training unique?
So I think this is something I think you'll always hear about the culture, but I think what from when I was in uni, I think HSF was one of those firms that I did want I think wanted to train at, or definitely at least wanted to apply to and attend a back scheme. And I think a lot of that had to do with the people I had met from the firm at like lawfare events. I attended the disputes open day at the firm, and I think meeting them sort of they did show a genuine interest in getting to know you and like you as a person. So I think that was definitely something for me. The other thing was when I was at the firm on the back scheme, I would email. And I think when you're on the back scheme, they encourage you to sort of have coffee meetings with different people at the firm, depending on what sort of seats you're interested in or who you want to get to know, departments. And I think something I did, and I did actually do that. So I did email partners and everything. And people were very happy to sort of take time out of their very busy days to have a coffee with you and spend half an hour talking you through why they came to HSF, what they do, what their groups do, or what kind of work they've done. What makes it interesting. And I think that was a big thing for me. And they were very honest about their experiences, how they've sort of managed their work-life balance and things like that. And I think that level of honesty and that level of connect with people does make a difference, which is why they say attend back schemes and attend events, because you sort of have to get along with the people you work with. It is needed, especially when you work in a career like this where you see them. I mean, not now see them, but when you're working with these people sometimes very late into the night, and if you don't get along, then it is obviously a lot harder to do that. In terms of what makes the training unique, again, I think it's just people are very invested in your development, and if you tell them something's not working for you, they will try and change it. If you tell them you'd like more experience doing something, they will give that to you. I mean, the other day I was speaking to my So we get partner mentors at the firm, which I think is another great thing, because I speak to my partner mentor every time I have a performance review or when I have some sort of thing that I need to speak to him about. And he's very encouraging and sort of they're very good at, because these people have been at the firm for so long, they know how it runs, and they've had the experiences you're having now. Pretty much everyone at this firm has had before, and it's just a bit reassuring sometimes to be told by someone that's senior that it's fine, these things happen and there's a way of dealing with them. Like, not everything is the end of the world. There's very rarely anything that's the end of the world and can't be fixed. And it's just reassuring. And I think something he said to me was, there's no limit to what a trainee can and cannot do. Trainees at the firm are encouraged to do pretty much everything. If you ask for responsibility, they're willing to give it to you. And if you show them you can take it on, they're willing to give you more. And I mean, I've had experience sort of putting together first drafts of submissions, first drafts of agreements, and people will review them, but it's just good experience and good exposure. And I think the firm is really committed to giving you that. So yeah, I think that for me was why HSF, I guess.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Joanna, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that great answer. I agree with everything Alagu said, and I won't add too much just because I'm conscious of time. But the one thing that I think for me personally distinguished HSF from the other firms, which I'm sure you will hear this word over and over again, but it is the culture. I know, don't all cringe at the same time, but I think the more of these sorts of events you go to, and I think the more people you speak to at each firm, you do definitely get a sense of a culture. Obviously, there are always like outliers, and not everyone, I'm not going to say I like would get on with everyone at HSF, because that's not the point. But as sort of a general culture, which is why I'd encourage people to go to as many of these events as possible. That's what I did when I was a student, and that's how I chose HSF. Like, the number of open days and like firm presentation evenings and things like that I went to were just countless. Because if you just look at our website, yes, it looks very impressive, but so do all the other city law firm website. You're not gonna distinguish HM reading about us. I personally don't think. I think that's all I'd personally add. But I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. I think that's so true for all firms. One more question from Georgia is, I don't know if you'd know this, but a question for both of you. Do you know if are the energy departments, both finance and corporate, sustainable energy or a mix, and how much of it is sustainable, if any?
They are a mix. I will say they used to be a lot more oil and gas heavy. But there is a lot of renewable energy. So personally, in the finance team, I work on both. So I've just closed on a very large oil deal, but I'm also on a like hydropower deal in Uganda. So there will be a mix of both. I think increasingly renewable energies is increasing, and what we're also finding is a lot of our oil and gas clients are having to do renewable energy as well. So the mix of it isn't just a mix across the sector, but it's a mix within each client as well, because even the oil and gas clients are having to become sort of a bit more renewable friendly. I think the issue with renewables is it still hasn't become like widespread available. It's still very, very expensive, especially the startup costs. So I think clients are still trying to get like a good balance of both. And we're not going to see, suddenly in a couple of years, us just being 100% reliable on renewables as like a society. And I think it's just about accepting that it is going to be a slow progression. But yeah, so that's my aspect from like the finance team. And I think corporate is the same, Alagu, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I mean, we're definitely a mix. So the corporate group is sort of everyone tries and does a bit of everything, but you sort of end up in your own niche. So the group sort of has your team of people who do a lot of oil and gas. You have a team that does a lot of infrastructure. You have a team that does a lot of power. And I think recently, you can go and Google this after, but BP closed a deal with Equinor for an offshore wind farm in I can't remember off the coast of where, but yeah, so HSF helped with that. And I think when you have, so that is sort of a market leading, groundbreaking deal, and especially for BP as well, because BP is obviously known for its oil and gas, and they made this commitment to decarbonize. And this was their initiative, one of their many initiatives towards it, and we got to help them with it. So I think the firm is very, very committed to it, and the corporate group. The head of the energy practice sits in the group I sit in, and they've sort of now got a focus on decarbonization. They put out a lot of know-how on it on the website. They are talking to a lot of clients about it, sort of driving the change in the industry. And obviously, HSF's energy practice is high up there. So the firm does have a sort of good connect with clients to go out there and tell them about what they can be doing and what's going on in the market essentially, and how they can sort of realign their focus, or how they can achieve their zero emission goals by whenever they've set for them to be achieved. So yeah, I think it is a very interesting time, and there's a lot of climate change work that comes through the group as well. So yeah, the firm is focused on that. But I mean, as Joanna said, oil and gas does still form a big part of the world economy, and I think it will take time. But definitely, I think COVID has put a lot of things into perspective for many companies, many people, and I think so the change may have actually been accelerated a little more than it would have otherwise been. But yeah, so I think from both ends, yeah, as Joanna said, it's definitely a mix at the moment, at least.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's actually really interesting. We've got a good few questions. The next one from Zara is, do you think your training contract at HSF is giving you a lot of valuable hands-on experience, and what made you choose to work there?
So I think I sort of covered this before, but I think it's essentially, it does give you hands-on experience. I mean, it might have been a little different if we were in the office in terms of we'd get to attend client meetings and things like that, which obviously is a lot harder now. And you also don't have your sort of, when we're in the office, we sit with our supervisors, so we get to listen in on calls they have as well, which they try to replicate now, but it's not always possible. But yeah, I think apart from that, they do like to give you responsibility, and as I said before, I've got my fair share of responsibility, and it is quite encouraging. So yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Joanna, would you say the same? Just briefly.
Yeah, I will say your experience and how hands-on you are is definitely dependent on which department you're sitting in, but I think that's sort of replicated at every firm. More generally speaking, you'll get a lot more client contact in your transactional seats than you will in a dispute seat, and that's just because the nature of a dispute and the fact that sort of anything you say or do can be held against you, I guess. But because transactional things like you're working on a deal with the other side, and sort of the end goal is the same, like you're both working towards the same thing, but obviously in a dispute you're not. So in my dispute seat, most of the work and everything I was doing would be directly for the sort of internal HSF team. Whereas now in my finance seat, like a lot of the emails and stuff that I'm sending out on a daily basis is going straight to the client or straight to all our different local or UK council as well. So there's your sort of the nature of how hands-on you get will be dependent on your seat, but I think the fact that HSF requires you to do quite a range of different seats, you have to do at least one transactional and dispute seat, that just means that you will end up getting that range of experience. So yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. The next two questions are fairly similar. So just asking how the firm has adapted to coronavirus, how it's affected the firm, and what is the home working system like?
So, I mean, the firm has, I think, like any other firm in the city, it does take a while to sort of adapt to it. But I think they've done pretty well, and I think the firm's IT team has been great. I think everyone probably has had problems, but they're always on hand. So it's I mean, it's not been, I think, like anyone else, it probably hasn't been the smoothest thing to happen, but I don't think anyone ever expected that. But I think the firm's been great with it. How is it working from home? I think that's I don't think the work's changed much. I think I'd be doing the same level of work. As I said, you might miss a few elements, but I think what's completely different now is the way you interact with people. Whereas in the office, I'd be able to see my supervisor and know if she's stressed or if she's very busy or if that's the right time to approach her. I don't have that sort of connect anymore. So it's a lot more of guesswork and trying not to yeah, but I think people are generally willing to sort of take your emails, take calls, and answer any questions. But yeah, I think you miss that. The other thing you miss is just meeting other people in the office. So Joanna and I are in the same cohort. So every day we'd meet each other and other people from our cohort for lunch, and we obviously don't have that anymore. So I think they try to replicate it. Like Joanna is also the trainee representative for our cohort, so they try to replicate it by doing virtual lunches. But I don't think there's anything like actually being in the same room as people from your cohort and just learning about everyone's day and how it's been going and things like that. So yeah, I think you definitely miss out on those elements. But yeah, I think it's I don't know if it gets easier. I think for us, obviously, we changed seats, and I think changing seats when you're in the middle of a lockdown, not in the office, is a lot harder. But I mean, I've been trying to do work for different people, so I get to know my team better and things like that. So yeah, I think it's not the easiest and it's not ideal, but I think you have to make the best of the situation.
Yeah, that's so true. It's such a strange reality we're all still trying to get used to about 7 months
Yeah.
in. And we've got so many more questions. So if Joanna, you want to take this one, or either of you, what does the firm stand on the SQE, and will it replace the current route in the next couple of years?
I think I don't know if I'm mistaken, Alagu, but I think that is it next September that we're using SQE? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think the SQE is being rolled out from the cohort that starts maybe around next September. We may be wrong, but I think that's when that's about, or is it the cohort from 2020?
I'm not going to lie to you, we're probably not the best people to be asking this question. This is a grad rec question, but I think this should be very clear on our website, and if it's not, then please do get in touch with graduate recruitment. They'd be more than happy to give you a clearer answer on that. Sorry that we can't be more helpful than that.
No, that's fine. I think it is 2021, but obviously I don't know. But yes, please do email HSF if it's not clear in the website. A question about gender equality is, what makes HSF's approach to gender equality unique to other firms?
So I think what I was talking about earlier, the fact that we do have separate women's networks for both trainees and associate is very unique. Just having a trainee run network in itself is unique to HSF. The BAME network is also trainee run, so it's not just the women's network that is trainee run. And just to emphasize it is just because sort of gender equality and diversity is different at different levels of your career. For example, female partnership is only 26%. I will put my hands up and think that's disgraceful. When you look at that statistic across the rest of the city, it doesn't look so disgraceful because the rest of the city looks like that. Doesn't make it okay. HSF's female partnership has increased by like over 50% in the last 5 years. So it has increased drastically, but when you look at it as 26%, to me personally, it does still sound very low. As a trainee, that is not an issue for me in terms of my sort of cohort, because our cohort trainees is at about 60% female. So when I look at my peers, I don't look around and think, oh my God, the gender inequality is insane. So whereas I guess that's what the senior associates and the partners see. What I do see is I look up and 75% of the partners and seniors that I am working for are men. That is where I take issue. So it's just the fact that we have these networks that sort of separate trainees and associates, I think is really unique and really needed, because the issues that we have with gender equality are going to be different. I mean, looking at ways that I can look up and say, that's who I want to be in 20 years. That the male trainees have a much wider variety. In my last seat, there wasn't a single female fee earning partner. And I think that's ridiculous. And I think that that's why we need more sessions like this, more women's run networks. And even as a trainee lawyer, we can start that discussion from now, because if I represent 60% of trainees, why is my gender only representing 26% of the partners? Before I could rant about this for like a very long time, so I'm gonna stop there. But yeah, I hope that gives a little bit of why I think we're a bit different with our approach. But yeah.
Yeah, so true. Right, to run through them quickly, I think we got like 4 more questions in 4 minutes, so we'll see how we go. So Tegan asks, you speak about taking on roles within the networks. Because of this, do you think that talking about a personal commitment to women in law or BAME, etc., through societies and volunteering will be valuable in applications?
Look, again, that kind of experience is definitely valuable. And I think apart from just being a member of it, you are probably, if you say you're on the committee, if you are on the committee, then that also shows sort of leadership and driving change and things like that. And obviously those are all valuable skills, but it comes back to the point that when you draft an application, there's a difference between just saying I've done X and instead saying I've done X, and X is relevant to Y, and sort of building on it and why the skills you've developed are relevant to the firm and relevant to being a trainee. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be relevant to being a trainee. I think even just relevant to the firm, for example, that you are very committed to diversity and things like that. They're all important elements of the society we live in. But you should, I think it's more than just saying, I did this. It's more about saying, I did this and. So yeah, I think it just goes back to the manner in which you decide to draft your application. But yeah, those are all valuable things, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's as well with everything as well. Joanna mentioned earlier with your roles, just make sure you tailor it to the questions, and you can make really any experience relevant. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Next question from Georgia is, what are your average working hours like?
I'm probably not a good person to ask this to right now, because I've just come out of a tail end of a dreadful couple of weeks. But your average working hours change depending on which department you're in. Some departments are notoriously busier than others. And then even in those departments, it will depend on what deals you happen to be on at that time, what time in the year it is. In transactional seats, the lead up to Christmas tends to be super busy. In disputes, the courts are closed during August, so it's really quiet. So it is completely dependent. What I will say is transactional seats are notorious for having a lot more sort of peaks and troughs in the hours. So your hours will vary much more widely than they would in a dispute seat, where it will be a lot more consistent. Just disputes are a lot longer, and you can normally see the court deadlines quite far in advance to work towards them. So like there will be days where I'm like really quiet and I will log off at 5:30. The last couple of weeks, it has been like midnight finishes, and I'm going to be honest about that. Sometimes you will do that. What I will say is at HSEF, when you are working those hours, they do recognize that that's not like normal, that shouldn't be expected of you, and they do recognize that you're working like extra hard to be putting in those hours. So it was a fantastic deal, and I'm so happy to have been a part of it. And when you're working till midnight, like I was working with the junior and the senior associate like the whole time, so I didn't feel like I was doing it alone. Like we constantly had like a Teams chat open where we were talking to each other. And the deal closed on Friday, and I was given today and tomorrow off as time off in lieu, just as to sort of recognize that like all the hours I did put in were like sort of extraordinary. So I didn't actually work today, and I won't be working tomorrow. So yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Alagu, anything to add to that? What are your working hours like?
Yeah, I think they really differ from day to day. I mean, when I was in arbitration, I'd have when it's sort of the run up to a filing, it does get busy because I mean these documents have to be turned out quite fast, and I mean there's something to be said about proofreading and cross reference and things like that. They seem like the easiest tasks to do, but they take the longest. So it is long hours at that point. But I think as Joanna said, when there's a team spirit going, you don't feel like you're at this alone. The team spirit's a lot more, I think, when you're in the office. But I think the people I've worked with so far, when I've worked on these dreadful weeks, when I was in arbitration, we were working on sort of something that had to be sent out really quickly. And I had 2 absolutely dreadful weeks. But I don't think it ever affected me during those 2 weeks. I think there was so much adrenaline, but I was also speaking to people all the time, and people were involving me in all the calls and discussions. You don't actually, I think it may catch up to you afterwards, but I think when you're on it, it's very interesting work. And I think generally across the firm, you're working on very interesting things, and the teams are great when you work with them. So I think it's quite all right. But I think generally I'd say it differs, as Joanna said. Some days we log off at 5:30, some other days it's about 7, 8. It goes later than that. I think I've only ever twice stayed up till the next morning, but even then it wasn't like I had to continue working through the day. I was allowed to just log off and log on much later in the day into work. So I did get my sleep and things like that. So I think the partners who are in charge of your matters do take your well-being very, very seriously. And so if you do tell them, I need a break, like I need 3 hours to myself, they will be respectful of that. And yeah, so I think, I mean, it differs. And I think they don't lie when they say when you go into a law firm, you never know what your day is going to look like, more so in corporate than more so in transactional. But it's true. You don't know what your day is going to look like.
Yeah, I definitely think that makes it more interesting. Right, we have one really quick question left, and it's actually just for Alagu. It's just about, having finished your school back in India, how quickly did you get accustomed to the British commercial world? And are there any tips that you would suggest that you mentioned in your application about being an Indian student? And I'm afraid that's all the questions we'll have time for, but please do type them and I'll try and keep them and send them on.
To be fair, I didn't actually work in the Indian commercial world. So I didn't have sort of a retraining into the British commercial world or anything like that. So I mean, that's a bit of a harder one. But I think in terms of mentioning in my application, I don't remember my application, and but I don't think I explicitly mentioned being an Indian student, but I think I sort of drew on the experiences. Or I may have been, I think I did sort of a volunteering experience when I was in India and things like that. So I did draw on some of those, but as Joanna said, you have to link those kind of things back to what skills you gain from them and how that's relevant to being a lawyer in the city. So I think there's a lot of valuable things you might have done, and it's just about how you sort of bring that out in your application. In terms of the first question, the honest answer is I don't really have an answer, because I didn't work in the Indian commercial sphere before I moved here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd just like to say thank you so much. Yeah, we're going to thank you from the messages. Thank you so much for both attending this event. It's been so interesting, and it's so, as you said, so brilliant to speak to people from the firm, because you can only ever read so much off the website. So thank you to our two wonderful guests for coming along, and everybody else for getting involved and typing questions. It's great to see that people get something out of these events as well. So thank you so much for attending the event, and good evening to everyone. I hope you all have a lovely day, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.